Life has a way of throwing unexpected challenges at us, testing our resilience and shaping the people we become. This is the story of Emily Carter, a dedicated waitress who always believed in doing the right thing, even when it came at a personal cost. Her unwavering kindness led to an unjust punishment, but fate had something greater in store for her. What happened next not only changed her life, but also ignited a transformation within her entire workplace. Stay with this story until the end to witness a powerful message about integrity, courage, and standing up for what is right. For nearly 3 years, Emily had dedicated herself to her job at Sunset Diner. It wasn't a glamorous place, just a modest, old-fashioned restaurant wedged between a gas station and a laundromat in the heart of Springfield. The customers were a mix of weary truck drivers, construction workers grabbing a quick bite, and families sharing a meal on quiet Sunday mornings. The pay barely covered her needs. The hours were grueling, and management remained indifferent to the struggles of their employees. But Emily had no choice. She wasn't just working for herself. Her younger brother, Jake, was in college, and though he was unaware of it, she was helping cover his expenses. Their mother couldn't always afford to help, so Emily quietly pitched in, making sure he had money for books and groceries. To do that, she took on double shifts, filled in whenever someone called out, and sacrificed any dream she once had. Once she had imagined finishing school, pursuing a career in business, making something more of herself. But life had put those dreams on hold. For now, the diner was her reality. Even in the midst of exhaustion, she found meaning in her work. She memorized regular customers' favorite meals, greeted them by name, and did her best to brighten their day with a kind word or a warm smile. Yet beneath the surface, Sunset Diner had a harsh, unwritten rule. Some customers were valued more than others. Emily had witnessed it time and time again. The well-dressed patrons, the ones who looked like they had money, were treated with enthusiasm and care. But the working-class customers, the truck drivers, construction workers, and elderly patrons, were often met with indifference or outright neglect. Olivia, a senior waitress, barely glanced up from her phone when certain customers walked in. Jake, a newer server, openly ignored tables he thought wouldn't tip well. Emily despised this silent discrimination. She had learned the hard way that speaking up came with consequences. Months ago, she had casually mentioned that a customer had been waiting too long for service, only to be met with a sharp glare from Olivia. "You don't get paid extra for being a saint, Emily," she had scoffed. The message was clear: keep quiet and follow the unspoken rules, or make things harder for yourself. Since then, Emily had swallowed her frustration, choosing to keep her head down rather than spark unnecessary conflict. But no matter how much she tried to ignore it, the unfairness gnawed at her. Why was it so difficult to treat people with simple kindness? Why did showing respect feel like an act of defiance in a place built on serving others? Every day she thought about leaving, walking away from the toxic environment. But with bills to pay and no safety net, quitting was not an option. And then came the night that changed everything. The night she was forced to make a choice between staying silent and standing up for what was right. A choice that would cost her everything, yet give her something far greater in return. It was a quiet Wednesday evening when an older man entered the diner. There was nothing remarkable about his appearance. His clothes were clean but simple, his posture slightly hesitant. Emily noticed the way he paused at the entrance, as if bracing himself for the cold reception he already knew was coming. Sure enough, her co-workers barely acknowledged him. Olivia didn't even lift her eyes from her phone. Jake, mid-conversation with another server, glanced his way before quickly looking away, pretending not to see him. The air grew thick with unspoken judgment. Emily had seen this scenario unfold too many times before. Some customers were invisible to her colleagues, and this man was one of them. He stood there for a moment, scanning the room, uncertainty written across his face. His shoulders slumped slightly, as though he was already preparing himself for the quiet rejection. A few seconds passed, and still no one moved. The unspoken rule was clear. This man wasn't a priority. A wave of frustration swelled in Emily's chest. She couldn't let this happen again. Taking a steadying breath, she stepped forward, offering a warm smile. "Good evening, sir. Would you prefer a booth or a table?" The man's eyes flickered with surprise. He hesitated for only a moment before nodding slightly. "A booth, please. Emily led him to a cozy seat near the window, handing him a menu with genuine kindness. Take your time. Let me know if you have any questions. He settled in, still looking a bit cautious as though unsure whether her kindness was real. Without waiting for him to ask, she hurried to the kitchen and returned with a fresh pot of coffee, pouring him a hot cup. Let me know if you'd like a refill anytime, she said with a reassuring smile. For a moment, he simply studied her, his expression unreadable. Then, with the smallest nod of appreciation, he murmured, "Thank you." Meanwhile, Emily felt the weight of her co-worker's stares. Olivia rolled her eyes, muttering something under her breath. Jake smirked, shaking his head. Their silent judgment was unmistakable. They thought she was wasting her time. But Emily didn't care. This was how a customer deserved to be treated, with dignity, with warmth, with simple human decency. As the man browsed the menu, Emily lingered near the counter, pretending to check order slips while discreetly watching him. She saw the way his posture eased, how his fingers loosened their grip on the menu, how the tension in his face softened just slightly. He hadn't expected much. He had likely braced himself for another cold, dismissive experience. But a small act of kindness had made a difference. And for Emily, that was all that mattered. She had made the right choice. She knew that in her heart. But what she didn't realize was that a single act of kindness was about to change everything. The next morning, Emily was summoned to the manager's office. The air inside felt heavier than usual, thick with an unspoken finality. Mark, the owner of Sunset Diner, stood behind his cluttered desk, arms crossed over his chest, his expression unreadable. "We're letting you go." The words hit her like a sudden, crushing weight. Her breath caught in her throat. "What?" Mark sighed as if the conversation exhausted him, rubbing his temples before repeating himself, this time slower, more dismissive. "It's just not working out." Emily's pulse quickened. "Not working out?" Her voice was barely above a whisper, yet the disbelief in it was unmistakable. "I've been here for nearly 3 years. I've never missed a shift, never been late. I give my all to this place, and now you're telling me it's not working out." Mark avoided her gaze, shuffling through a file on his desk as though looking for an answer he already knew. "We've made our decision." A cold, sick feeling settled in Emily's stomach. She understood now. This wasn't about her performance. It wasn't handing him a menu with genuine kindness. "Take your time. Let me know if you have any questions." He settled in, still looking a bit cautious as though unsure whether her kindness was real. Without waiting for him to ask, she hurried to the kitchen and returned with a fresh pot of coffee, pouring him a hot cup. "Let me know if you'd like a refill anytime," she said with a reassuring smile. For a moment, he simply studied her, his expression unreadable. Then, with the smallest nod of appreciation, he murmured, "Thank you." Meanwhile, Emily felt the weight of her co-worker's stares. Olivia rolled her eyes, muttering something under her breath. Jake smirked, shaking his head. Their silent judgment was unmistakable. They thought she was wasting her time. But Emily didn't care. This was how a customer deserved to be treated, with dignity, with warmth, with simple human decency. As the man browsed the menu, Emily lingered near the counter, pretending to check order slips while discreetly watching him. She saw the way his posture eased, how his fingers loosened their grip on the menu, how the tension in his face softened just slightly. He hadn't expected much. He had likely braced himself for another cold, dismissive experience. But a small act of kindness had made a difference. Emily turned and walked out of the office with her head held high. But as she stepped into the dining area, she saw them. Olivia, standing near the counter with her arms crossed, a self-satisfied smirk tugging at her lips. Jake, suddenly interested in wiping down the counter, refusing to meet her gaze. The weight of what had just happened settled on her shoulders. She had lost her job, her only source of income, her stability. And yet, as she pushed open the diner's door and stepped out into the crisp morning air, a strange sense of clarity washed over her. She might have lost this battle, but she refused to lose herself. Sitting in her car, gripping the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles turned white, Emily fought back the frustration clawing at her chest. Then her phone buzzed. An unknown number. She hesitated, her heart pounding. Was it another bill collector? A mistake? Or worse, someone calling to offer false hope? Curiosity won. She swiped to answer. Hello? A deep, steady voice responded. Emily, this is Daniel Reeves. You served me last night at Sunset Diner. Her breath hitched, the older man, the one she had refused to ignore. Oh, yes, sir, she managed, her voice uncertain. How can I help you? There was a pause before he spoke again, his tone calm but firm. I heard what happened. You were fired for treating me with respect. Emily swallowed hard. The reality of it all still stung. I guess that's how things work around there, she murmured, gripping the steering wheel even tighter. Another pause. Then Daniel's voice carried something unexpected. Conviction. Well, I want to offer you a job. Her heart stopped for a beat. Not just any job, he continued. A management position at my restaurant. I need someone with integrity, someone who treats people the right way. And I think you'd be perfect. Emily's pulse roared in her ears. This couldn't be real. A management position? Her? For years, she had done everything right, given everything she had, and still been treated like she was disposable. But now, out of nowhere, an opportunity was being handed to her. Could she step into a leadership role? Could she make a difference? Fix what was broken? She glanced back at Sunset Diner through her windshield, the place where she had poured so much of her time, her energy, her heart, only to be tossed aside like she was nothing. Did she want to go back into the restaurant business, knowing how ruthless it could be? But then, deep inside her, something stirred. The part of her that had refused to stay silent. The part of her that had refused to accept injustice. Before she had time to second-guess herself, she found her voice. You're offering me the chance to fix what's broken, she said, the words feeling like a challenge, a declaration. Daniel's voice softened, yet remained steady. I'm offering you the chance to make it your own. I don't just want a manager, Emily. I want someone who can build something better. A spark ignited in her chest. She had spent years keeping her head down, believing that playing it safe was the only way to survive. But where had that gotten her? Fired, disrespected, forgotten. Maybe it was time to stop being afraid. Maybe it was time to take control instead of always being at the mercy of someone else's rules. She exhaled, letting go of the weight of the past few hours. Then, with a newfound sense of purpose, she answered, I'll do it, but on one condition. I run things my way. There was a brief silence before Daniel chuckled, his voice warm with approval. That's exactly what I was hoping you'd say. The next morning, Emily stood outside Sunset Diner, gripping the strap of her bag. Yesterday, she had walked out of this place with nothing. Today, she was walking back in with something more powerful than a paycheck. She was walking back in with a purpose. The return not as an employee, but as the boss. The morning air was crisp, carrying the comforting scent of freshly baked bread from the bakery down the street. The usual breakfast rush had begun, but today something was different. Something was about to change forever. Emily stepped inside the familiar walls of Sunset Diner, her heart steady, her purpose clear. The hum of conversation filled the room as customers sipped their coffee, the clatter of plates and the shuffle of busy waitresses moving between tables, creating a rhythm she knew all too well. The bell above the door chimed, a seemingly insignificant sound. Yet in that moment, it carried the weight of a new beginning. Across the room, Olivia's usual smirk faltered, confusion flickering across her face before her expression hardened. At the counter, Jake had been laughing mid-sentence. But as his eyes landed on Emily, his amusement vanished. A shadow of unease crept over him, and his grip on the coffee pot tightened. Then from the back office, Mark emerged, his hands full of invoices, his brow furrowed in irritation, until his gaze locked onto the man standing beside Emily, Daniel Reeves. Mark's face paled before a deep flush crept up his neck. His fingers twitched as if scrambling for control over a situation that had already slipped through his grasp. As of this morning, Daniel announced, his voice calm but firm, carrying the weight of authority, Sunset Diner has new management. Effective immediately, Mark. Your position is terminated. The room fell into a stunned silence. A fork clinked against a plate. A coffee cup hovered midair as a customer froze in the middle of a sip. Every eye in the diner darted between Mark, Daniel, and Emily, anticipation crackling in the air. Mark's face darkened with rage, his fists clenched at his sides as he sputtered, grasping for words for a defense, for control. You can't just... Daniel cut him off before he could finish. I've already seen and heard enough. His voice was unwavering, a final nail sealing the fate Mark had so carelessly crafted for himself. Turning to the staff, Daniel continued, letting his words settle over them like an unshakable truth. Last night, I came here as just another customer. What I witnessed was unacceptable. The only person who showed kindness, respect, and a real work ethic was this woman. He gestured toward Emily, his eyes unwavering. That's why she is now your new manager. Another ripple of silence spread through the diner. Olivia's complexion turned ashen, her smug exterior cracking. Jake clenched his jaw so tightly his teeth nearly ground together. The rest of the staff shifted uncomfortably, uncertainty written across their faces. Emily took a step forward. Though her heart pounded, her voice was steady, filled with the kind of strength that only comes from enduring injustice and choosing to rise above it. I know change isn't easy, she said, her gaze sweeping over her former coworkers. But from this moment forward, things will be different. This diner will be a place of fairness for both staff and customers alike. A sharp exhale came from Jake. Olivia, arms folded tightly over her chest, narrowed her eyes, her defiance still unshaken. And what if some of us don't like these new changes? She challenged, her tone laced with venom. Daniel gave a knowing smile, his expression unfazed. Then you're welcome to leave. His words landed like a heavy stone, sending ripples of realization through the room. Olivia's lips pressed into a thin line, but she said nothing more. Emily, undeterred, looked at the rest of the staff. For those who want to be part of something better, who want to work in an environment where respect is given to everyone, I look forward to working alongside you. A few hesitant nods came from the kitchen. The busboy, who had spent years keeping his head down, looked relieved. Even some customers gave small nods of approval, silently acknowledging the shift happening before their eyes. Letting the moment linger, Emily finally broke the silence with a firm, confident smile. Now let's get to work. The road ahead was not an easy one. Change rarely is. Olivia barely spoke to Emily, her usual smugness replaced with quiet resentment. Jake sulked through his shifts, his reluctance evident in every movement. Some employees left outright, unwilling to accept that the era of favoritism and unspoken rules was gone for good. Emily didn't lose sleep over it. She wasn't there to make friends. She was there to make things right. Weeks passed. Slowly but surely, the diner began to transform. Customers who had once been ignored were now greeted warmly. Service improved. A new sense of community took root. The toxicity that had thrived within the walls of Sunset Diner began to wither, replaced by a culture of teamwork and mutual respect. Emily led by example. No customer was dismissed based on appearances. No employee was overlooked or favored. She made changes, small, meaningful ones, encouraging genuine engagement with customers, updating the menu to include customer favorites, holding open forums for staff to voice their concerns. At first, resistance lingered. Olivia remained distant, her interactions with Emily curt and cold. Jake dragged his feet, unwilling to embrace the shift, yet unable to find a better alternative. A few employees stormed out when they realized the old way of doing things was never coming back. But those who stayed, those who chose to believe in something better, began to witness something remarkable. Pride in their work, genuine interactions, real smiles that weren't forced, a lightness in the air that had never existed before. And the customers noticed. Regulars who had been disregarded before now returned, tipping generously, expressing their gratitude for the change. New patrons began to walk through the doors, drawn in by the warmth that now radiated from a place that had once been tainted with indifference. One evening, as Emily wiped down the counter, an older man approached. He had been coming to the diner for years, but until now, no one had ever paid him much attention. I don't know what you did, he said, his voice carrying quiet admiration, but this place feels different, better. Emily looked at him, a deep sense of fulfillment settling in her chest. She smiled. It's not just me, she replied. It's all of us. Emily Carter's story is a powerful testament to the strength of integrity and kindness, even in the face of adversity. Doing the right thing isn't always easy. It can cost you your stability, your comfort, even your livelihood. But in the end, standing up for what is just and fair leads to something far greater than mere survival. It leads to true change. Emily didn't just fight against injustice, she dismantled it. She proved that a single person, armed with conviction and courage, can transform an entire culture. So tell me, if you were in Emily's shoes, would you have taken the risk? Would you have chosen integrity, even when it cost you everything? Let us know in the comments below. And if you believe in the power of kindness, fairness, and standing up for what's right, be sure to like this video, share it, and subscribe to Talk Story for more inspiring tales of resilience, transformation, and second chances. Because in the end, integrity always wins.